Okay, hello everyone. Let's talk about this very quickly. We're going to load data from CSV and Lakehouse to SQL Server in Fabric using Pyspark. This is a level 300 tutorial. Used to be a simple process, but with the improvement in the SQL security, it gets a little bit complicated. So we can no longer use the SQL login as a heads up for SQL users, so that why it's going to be a bit difficult. So we're going to talk about what's Pyspark, why we use Pyspark in Fabric, and then the prerequisite for this tutorial, which is you should be able to already load the CSV in your Lakehouse, and then you should be able to create your destination SQL server in the Fabric workspace. And then why do we need SQL Server table rather than the Lakehouse the Lakehouse table? So as you know, Lakehouse's table, and it can also store the unstructured data like the CSV. So we're gonna upload CSV, and then we can create a notebook inside the Lakehouse, and then to access the CSV and play with it, and then we're going to create a simple program to do that. And then this is where it gets complicated, because SQL login is no longer available in SQL Server Fabric for now. Maybe in the future it will be back, but it's not there right now. You're going to use the app ID from the Azure AD. So there's a lot of technology involved in this simple exercise. So we're gonna use the app ID. That's the equivalent of a service account in the old AD, but now it's an Azure AD, so we're going to use the app ID instead. And then we are going to create a table and then load the CSV, which is supposed to be very simple. So when I created this, I thought it was a very simple tutorial, but it's not. So Pyspark is Python that resides on a notebook, and it's an interface for Apache Spark that is specializes on distributed computing for large-scale data processing. So we have data frames and SQL. So you can both use SQL and data frame, which is the equivalent of data set. So the data resides in memory, which make it very fast. And this Pyspark is very good for distributed computing, which is the cloud, or parallel clusters, which actually loads data very fast into the cluster. It has also machine learning capability. It has integration with Python, which has a lot of libraries, but right now I don't think you can make use all of them in Pyspark with Fabric. It's pretty much limited there. So why use Pyspark still in Fabric? So it's integrated, it's native in Fabric, and Fabric is a subset of a cloud, of Azure Cloud, which specializes on the data. And all those data elements you can be bounded together by Pyspark, meaning you can talk to each other using Pyspark. And then it's native again to Fabric. You just create a notebook and then code right away. You don't need to install anything. You don't even need to install Python. It's already there for you, and it supports load files from CSV, Parquet, or JSON from one lake, and transform them and push data into Fabric SQL or warehouse. And then instead of learning a lot of technology, Fabric can be in a lot of data space, or a lot of technologies out there. It is in Snowflake, it is in Data Factory, it's in Databricks. So any data that uses notebook, Pyspark is there for you. So yeah, I really don't have a lot of exposure to Pyspark. I can code it, but I use AI for it. But now I realize that it's way to go to learn to invest on Pyspark, which is, if you know Python, it's pretty much easy. So when do we need the SQL Server Fabric warehouse? So if you need the consistency, you go for Fabric because it's very acid and it's SQL Server actually. So data is very much in ERD in there. So entity relationship, so all the good stuff, it's consistent. It has locking mechanism with it. And then it has a read write DQL or DML. It's full support, and then it's ideal for developers who and data warehouse engineers and professionals who are proficient in SQL Server. It has been there for 30 years now, more than 36 years. Uh, yeah, I started in SQL 3. And then, yeah, if you're into data warehousing and SQL-based BI OLAP scenarios, it requires full transactional guarantee and ACID and everything, go for SQL. And it has the GUI for you, which is the SSMS. While we'll use the Lakehouse table, it's also the same table that we can see in SQL as table. It has the heading and the rows in it, so they pretty much look the same, but this has a read-only SQL Analytics endpoint, so you need to use Spark Notebook instead. So if you've been programming with Spark ever since, then you might go for the Lakehouse table instead. It has limited TSQL support, and DML and most DLL are not supported on SQL Analytics endpoint. Its primary focus is for data engineer and data scientists who use Spark, Spark SQL and Scala for data manipulation. And if you are into machine learning, you would rather go with this and unstructured and semi-structured data and for general data exploration. And you are going to use Notebook rather than using SSMS. But I already see that it can actually connect to SSMS, but yeah, I don't know, haven't tried. There's so the full support is to access Lakehouse table is to use the Notebook. Yeah, that's the difference. And the second advantage of the Lakehouse, it's you can bind it actually to the Notebook, so you don't need to worry about the connection string. While in the Fabric, SQL Fabric, it's pretty much very secure, and SQL login has gone away, and you are going to use the Entra ID or the App ID from SQL Azure, which make these things a lot difficult. Anyway, it's because of the security, which is I like it because right now the it's more secure using the Entra ID to access Entra App ID to access SQL, which is that's the equivalent of service account and the olden AD, but we're talking now of Azure AD right now. And this is how you can read the CSV. So it just connect to create a session, and then the application name, and then this is the connection string to the CSV, and then you can just read the CSV into the data frame using this, and just the option for header. If it has header and strong schema bound, use the end per schema true, and then just show the percent. For SQL Server, it's going to be difficult. You're going to use the you won't need, this is the Entra ID, the user is found here. This is Azure ID actually, and then you just need to click to the app registration, and then you create your application. Then you need to grant this access to the workspace where Azure resides. So the SQL login is gone, and we're now going to use the Azure App ID, which is an equivalent of your service account. And you need to use the GUID to grant to the SQL server, not the friendly name. But for the workspace, you need to use the friendly name of the, this is the friendly name, it is a GUID equivalent. And for the SQL Server, you need to use the app ID GUID to grant access to that. And then to connect to SQL Server, you will need the application ID, tenant ID, and the secret. I'm going to show that in a while. And the app ID should be in the same instance of Azure AD who owns the public. So if you're not from within our organization, you cannot possibly log into our SQL Server, which is good. So this is how the app ID looks like. So when you register, so it will look like this. So you have this app ID, that's what you need, and then the tenant ID, which is you need. And then if you create a secret, it will have two values here, the secret GUID and then the secret value. For these two, you need that GUID. This one, you need the secret value, not the secret GUID. So yeah, again, that's close to a service account. So you need the following: client ID, which is this one, tenant ID, which is this one, and then the secret that resides in there. And then you just create one secret. Okay. So I'm gonna store this value to my Lakehouse table. Again, I don't want to discuss Lakehouse, but Lakehouse can store Lakehouse as table. So I'm gonna store this value rather than having this being typed again many times in many notebooks. So just store it into a login table in the Lakehouse. And then this is how you create that, right? Okay, so then this is how to ping the SQL Server. So just basically it's gonna read the configuration, the login, and configure the connection string based on the credential that I get from the Lakehouse, and build the connection string on the fly. So if you don't have access to the Lakehouse table, you won't be able to log in. Okay, and then let's just go ahead and jump into them very quickly. And I'm here in my public workspace, so or in my public interface or portal, and let's go ahead and jump right into the this is the test workspace, right? And in the workspace I have Lakehouse, and inside the Lakehouse I have tables and I have CSV. So, and I store both the login to SQL Server and the CSV in the Lakehouse. So the question is, why are we still using SQL Server? Because it has a lot of features that I mentioned a while ago. And I need to open to public because it's very, very slow. Yeah, I'm having difficulty doing that. So hang on a second. Let me pause this for a while. Okay, so here we are in the Lakehouse. I'm using this is the Lakehouse table. This is equivalent or similar to Azure table, and this is where we store the CSV. And you can just right click. This is the CSV here, and then when you click that, you can actually browse the CSV either as a file or a table, but you can just also click the properties and get the connection string from here. So I use the ABSF path for now, and then just copy that to my notebook to connect to this. But you can actually go ahead and browse this like you can preview the CSV, or you can also have the option to table view it, right, like an Excel. So, and what I'm going to do is inside my workspace, I created this is my first Pyspark program. It's like a hello world, and I'm gonna read the CSV into a data frame. So just like that, initiate the program, and this is the name of the program, get or create, and then that's the file path that I show you a while ago. Just right click the file, and then this is just how fast you can configure it. Technically, don't be intimidated by that. It's just like 5 lines of code, and you can actually already read the CSV directly into the data frame, right? And if you want to run that, you just click this, okay? And you're just gonna wait, and it's gonna take a few while, and it's gonna retrieve all the data, and yeah, there's no error. It's gonna show the data that you see a while ago. Now I use this because it's going to use this connection, the data items here by default. So I rather, if there's a lot of Lakehouse that I need to connect to, then I just use the ABFS connection string instead. It's not running again, so yeah, let's wait for it for a while. Hang on a second, let me just open the rest of the window and prepare it for you before I have the screens open, and so we can go faster. Okay, it already pulled the already ran, go to the CSV, and then it presented the data, it loaded the data into the data frame. So if you're familiar with, if you've been into Python, pretty much like Python, it is. Now, the second notebook that I created is workspace. Let's go here. Let's to store the login. I'm gonna store this login into the, again, you already showed the inside the Lakehouse, there's a Lakehouse table. So I'm gonna store this configuration into the table. So just create the table if it doesn't exist, and then supply this value, and then put that into a table, and it's gonna look like this, and I'm gonna store the connection string that I needed to connect to SQL Server. Question: we didn't have any connection string to the Lakehouse, right? That's because, again, you can add data items here, and new Lakehouse or existing data source, and then we just click that, and if you can see it here, that's why the notebook is connecting to the Lakehouse without any connection string. It's binded here with the data items, right? So I don't need to set up connection. And after that, so if we run this, it's gonna create the login table and store the value that you have seen here. And after that, we're going to retrieve that and supply that to our SQL Server. And hang on a second, let me just, okay, while it's running, let's go here, and I don't have a second Fabric open. Because it's slow. Yeah, another one. I just want to show, so we're running, so we created the table and stored the credential into the table, which is basically, if you expand the Lakehouse, it's just going inside this table, okay? Now the real value is in this login. It's going here to the login demo, and here are the credentials, and I'm gonna read that through so I'm gonna ping SQL Server, and SQL Server is, let me just open this as for a while. Oh, hang on. workspace. I think it's on the demo SQL. Right, so this is the SQL Server that we're trying to connect. And we're gonna retrieve the connection that we store here and make the connection string and connect to the server SQL Server in the Fabric, which is SQL Fabric. And I'm gonna use the permission that is stored from the enter ID that so instead of using my user credential, we're gonna use the enter ID, right? So this is the login and password for Fabric account, but for SQL Server, we're gonna use the enter ID. Again, it's found here, the enter application ID, and that is supposed to be, and that's the GUID and stuff in there. And again, when you click that, you are going to see an interface like this, and you'll see you get this GUID and you get the secret from here, right? That's what we stored in the table, in the data lake table. Now we're gonna go ahead and ping that SQL Server. Okay, here's the Fabric ping. So just 15 more minutes. And then while that's opening, let's open the rest of the... Okay. Is this the one? No, it's not. This is storing the this is the SQL ping. It's still loading. I'm gonna load the rest of the it's opening the SQL ping, and there it goes, and now it has that. While before we discuss that, let's just open the other notebooks that I have, and you already see how to load the CSV into the data frame, so we just need one more. Just open this load to SQL before we discuss the SQL ping. So basically, this is the SQL ping. It's going to, again, that's just instantiate the Spark, and it's going to query the Lakehouse table where the user ID is 1, because there's only one record in there, and then it's going to retrieve the client ID and the tenant ID, which we get from Azure, which is already stored in our Lakehouse table, right? So, and then it's gonna build the connection string on the fly. So as you can see, you are not going to see any secrets here. So even if you browse this, you won't be able to get the secrets because it's stored in the table. So if you don't have access to the Lakehouse, you won't be able to get those information. And when we run this, it's going to build the connection on the fly, and then just run a simple query and then tell us if it's able to connect to SQL Server, which is no, this is, oh no, no, I made a wrong. Yeah, so it's just the ping, it's there, right? So it's going to tell us if it's able to ping the table, and we don't need to read from one lake. Yeah, just tell us if we can ping the SQL Server. Okay, then run all. So again, it's just building the connection string on the fly from the GUI that's stored on the Lakehouse table. And there, Spark session started, and I was able to retrieve the configuration, and I'm building the connection, and yeah, the connection is successful. So 5 lines of code. It's just because we have comments, and the code was lengthy, but there's just basically 5 lines of code, and it's very clean. You don't have the credential in here. It's stored on the Lakehouse table anyway. But if there's other option, I'm thinking if we can use a keyboard or something, but we need 3 items to connect, right? The secrets, the application ID, and the instance GUID. So 2 GUIDs and then 1 ID. I don't think our keyboard is used to be a key value pair, so I don't think they can store all those 3 configurations that you need to connect or to ping your SQL destination. Anyway, before we discuss how to load, let's just open let's just talk about the permission for SQL Server, how it's working. So basically, it's a workspace here. And for the test, I'm gonna add you need to manage the access, and then you can add people. I already add the app ID, the application ID here. Again, that's the equivalent of service account, but this is the AD, Azure AD. So just click add people from here and type in the email or the application ID, and you have permission to the workspace. So again, the entire the app ID doesn't have permission to all the Fabric. It just have permission to the specific workspace, which is a pretty neat security implementation. So after that, you are going to grant access to SQL. Let's talk about the SQL first. Let's, if it open fast, we'll talk about this, but it doesn't. We're gonna wait for it and wait for it to open, and there's property, so you are supposed to see the connection string here, and you are going to use the JDBC. So again, it's not opening very quickly, so there it opens. So we're gonna use the JDBC. So this is actually the server name, right? This is that's the entire server name, and then that's a port. And once you're done, you're gonna grant permission to table. Let's go back to that later. You are going to grant permission to the app GUID, which so before you can get in, you need to have the intra ID. You need all the 3 GUIDs, store it on a table, make a connection string, and then you need to grant permission to the workspace, and then you need to grant permission to the SQL Server and to the tables or to the column level or to whatever items that you want to grant access to the SQL Server. And I'm not going to discuss the SQL Server permission here because that's another book to discuss. Okay, so I think grant GUID access to SQL Server GUID to SQL Server as admin. So it's gonna write a T-SQL for us, and yeah, it's going to look like this. Create login, and then add the role as sysad, and then you just need to provide the app ID, which you already saw that in the workspace, right? When you add the app ID, or you can just retrieve that to us, or retrieve that from the configuration table that you already created. Now here's how we are going to load to SQL. Again, this is a combination of the first notebook that I created. So I'm gonna read from CSV. So this is now the end-to-end. So we started the session. We are going to build the connection string using a query from the configuration table that created. Create the connection string, and then add the properties here, which is the client ID and then the client secret. So as you can see, there is no GUID or secret being loaded into the query, which make the code very neat. After that, we're going to load the okay, we are going to ping the server, check if the server we're able to connect. If we're able to connect, we proceed to the next one. Otherwise, we're going to exit the notebook. And then this is the first one that we created. We're going to connect to the CSV, load it into the data frame, and then if the table isn't there, we're gonna create a table, and if it's there, just try to say so the table is existing, and we're not going to do that anymore. And we're just going to load the data, and I already did that. So let me just run this. Okay. So it's now reading. It's now running the application. It's gonna tell us where it's, which is interesting. It's gonna tell us exactly what it's doing. Those are comments anyway. Okay, so it's starting the session. It's getting the configuration supposed to be. Now I just want to do some more super demo, but our connection doesn't allow that. So anyway, so there's one error because the table is already existing here, but that's already been captured by our try catch, and I just printed the error, so it looks like we have an error, but we did not. So we have session started, we retrieved the credential, we tested the connection, and then it's successful, and then we load the CSV to the data frame, and then we're trying to create the table, but the table is already there, and it just gives us this error, print the error from here, and then which is a try catch, so it proceeded to loading the data into the warehouse, which is here, right? And here's the customer, and yeah, that's the customer table. So if we try to delete the customer table and run the, so let's say the customer is not yet there, and script was drop, and let's drop that, execute run, and refresh this, and the table is no longer there, and then we're going to run the notebook again, and this time it's not going to have this error because we don't have the table is not existing, and run all, and it's gonna tell us what it's doing. So is it running already? I don't think I clicked the run. Right, session started. Okay, that should clear the screen. So started the session, I think I already created that. So it's gonna create the table. Oh, there was some error creating the table. It's probably already there again. So I probably double. Oh, it did run very quick the first time, but we removed the table from here, so we actually ran it the second time around, and supposed to be the customer again is loaded in here. So I did actually run it twice, and it's just very quick load it, very fast, so I wasn't able to see it, right? But again, I'm not convinced. Script as drop, and let's do it again for the purpose of convincing ourselves, and then refresh. And then let's go back here. So, and then when we run this, it's not supposed to show us the error, right? Run all. Yeah, there it is. Starting the session, it's getting the configuration after that, and it's going to ping the server, okay? And then connection was successful. It created the table. Okay, it created the table, and then I checked if the table is already there, and it did throw an error because that was the logic. That was a wrong logic. It will still throw an error, but it was catched, and the data was written to the warehouse. So how am I supposed to do that? First, I'm gonna check if the table is existing. If not, go ahead and create it. But anyway, it did actually what it needs to do. So again, it just created the table here, right, and load the data into it. Okay, so that's all for now. I don't want to, tie up or very long. The just key takeaway, SQL Server in Fabric is a new technology. It's a new SQL Server that's residing on Fabric, and it no longer make use of the SQL login. I think it's for good. That it's gone, and now we're using the Enter ID and the App ID to log into SQL Server, and you cannot use your own login, because it's tied to your personal account to program Pyspark, and instead you need to create an App ID which is equivalent to your service ID to load data. So that's just what makes things difficult for now. But once you get used to it, it's pretty much easier in the future. And again, another key takeaway is that you need to invest on Pyspark, because this is actually a required technology for data engineers, data warehouse engineers like us. So good luck to your career, and I see you in more upcoming tutorials. Thank you for watching.